On the evening of October 14th, 2018, Daniel Whitaker left his modest home in the quiet town of Fairview, Ohio. A 36-year-old auto mechanic, Daniel was known to be dependable, friendly, and deeply rooted in the community. He wasn't the kind of man who vanished without explanation. Yet, by the following morning, he was gone. And over the next several weeks, Fairview would discover that Daniel's disappearance was far more complicated and far more deliberate than anyone could have imagined. Daniel lived alone in a small two-bedroom house at the edge of town. Neighbors often saw him working late in his garage, fixing cars for friends or tinkering with his old Ford pickup. On that Sunday evening, at 8:47 p.m., a neighbor spotted Daniel locking his garage and heading toward his truck. He appeared calm, carrying only his wallet and phone. The neighbor assumed he was going out for a late snack or meeting a friend. It was the last confirmed sighting of Daniel Whitaker. When Daniel didn't show up for work at Mackenzie's Auto the next morning, his boss, Linda Mackenzie, called his phone. It went straight to voicemail. By noon, Linda had driven to his house. The truck was gone, the front door locked, and nothing seemed out of place. She left a note on his door, but by the following day, still no word. Linda called the Fairview Police Department, filing a missing person report. Detective Aaron Cole was assigned to the case. Cole, a 19-year veteran of the force, started with standard procedure, checking Daniel's phone records, bank activity, and speaking to his close contacts. The first surprise came from the phone records. Daniel's last call was made at 9:12 p.m. the night he disappeared, to a number registered to an abandoned property on the outskirts of town. Cole visited the property, an old farmhouse that had been empty for years. Inside, the dust was thick, the windows boarded, and the air stale. But in the kitchen, Cole found fresh, muddy footprints, too fresh to be more than a day old. There was no sign of Daniel, but in the sink, they discovered a coffee mug with fingerprints that would later match his. This raised questions. Why would Daniel go to a deserted house? And who else had been there with him? In the days that followed, police tracked down Daniel's truck. It was found abandoned at a truck stop 40 miles away. The security footage showed something strange. At 10:04 p.m., Daniel pulled into the lot, parked, and sat in the cab for nearly 15 minutes. Then, another vehicle, a dark-colored SUV, parked directly behind him, blocking the view from the camera. When the SUV drove off, Daniel's truck remained. Daniel himself was never seen leaving. Investigators released the footage to the public, and tips began pouring in. Most led nowhere: mistaken sightings, conspiracy theories, and even claims that Daniel had faked his own disappearance. But one call stood out. A woman named Emily Sloan claimed she recognized the SUV. She believed it belonged to her ex-boyfriend, Mark Rivers, a former co-worker of Daniel's. Rivers was a name Detective Cole already knew. He had been arrested twice for assault and was fired from Mackenzie's Auto after a dispute involving stolen car parts. Cole brought him in for questioning. Rivers admitted to owning a dark SUV, but claimed he had sold it months before. His alibi for the night of October 14th was thin. He said he'd been at home watching TV. Without concrete evidence, police had to let him go. Then, a break. Daniel's bank card was used 3 days after his disappearance, at an ATM in Columbus, over 100 miles away. The security footage showed a man in a baseball cap withdrawing cash, but it wasn't Daniel. The man's face was partially obscured, but investigators noted a tattoo on his hand. a small, black spade. Detectives traced the tattoo to a local gang member named Trevor Lane, who was known to associate with Mark Rivers. Lane denied involvement, claiming he'd found the bank card in a parking lot. Still, it was enough to keep both men under surveillance. Nearly 2 months after Daniel vanished without a trace, the case took a grim and irreversible turn. A seasoned hunter, trekking through a dense and rarely visited stretch of forest about 60 miles from Fairview, stumbled upon something he would never forget. Beneath a tangle of brittle branches and a thin dusting of snow, partially hidden by fallen leaves, lay the unmistakable outline of human remains. The scene was eerily silent, save for the rustle of the wind, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. When authorities arrived, the body was carefully exhumed. The cold air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth, and the grim expressions on the investigators' faces told the story before the forensics team could. Dental records soon confirmed the worst fears. It was Daniel Whitaker. The coroner's report revealed his cause of death, a violent, fatal blow to the head, delivered with blunt force trauma. This was no accident. It was deliberate. The site yielded more than just a body. Investigators discovered deep tire tracks pressed into the soft ground, tracks that matched the tread pattern of Mark Rivers' SUV. Scattered near the remains were several weather-worn fragments of silver duct tape. Laboratory analysis later showed they were consistent with the roll found in the duffel bag hidden in Rivers' garage. The evidence was building, and it was damning. By early January 2019, the pressure had reached its peak. Faced with an unraveling alibi and mounting forensic proof, Mark Rivers was taken into custody. The charges were as heavy as the atmosphere in the Fairview courthouse: first-degree murder, kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. His longtime associate, Trevor Lane, was arrested shortly afterward and charged as an accessory. Prosecutors pieced together a chilling narrative. Rivers lured Daniel to an abandoned farmhouse. Lane helped subdue him, and from there Daniel was driven to the woodland where his life was violently taken. The trial gripped the community. Rivers, with a defiant stare, maintained his innocence, claiming he was the victim of a calculated frame-up. But the jury saw through it. The forensic trail was too clear, the coincidences too impossible to ignore. In March 2020, after days of deliberation, the verdict came: guilty on all counts. Mark Rivers was sentenced to life without parole. Trevor Lane received 15 years, a punishment many in Fairview thought was far too lenient. For the town, the case was more than just another headline. It was a haunting reminder that darkness can exist in the most ordinary places, and that the smiling faces we pass every day may conceal grudges, secrets, and dangerous obsessions. The story of Daniel Whitaker became a whispered cautionary tale, proof that the past, no matter how deeply buried, can return with a vengeance. Daniel had been an honest, hard-working man, the kind of neighbor people trusted. But on that crisp October night, the life he had built was shattered by a ghost from his own history, one that came for him with meticulous planning, patience, and a hunger for retribution. In the end, the past didn't just catch up to him, it consumed him.